Hi, everybody. I'm Pete Christensen,
I'm Coffee Brown.
and welcome to episode 36 of
Don't Die Dumb.
We're recording this on Mother's Day. I grew up in a very warm and loving household. My mother was great. Had a lot of kids. We each got a bucket of water a week. We could drink it or wash in it, whatever we wanted. You know, she would be baking a cake. We'd ask if we could lick the egg beater. It was electric. Sometimes she'd turn it off. I remember one time I asked her, I said, "Can I lick the bowl?" She said, "Yeah, but remember, you get sick if you don't flush first." Oh, she was great. One time I came home and she had hit my old man with a chair. I said, "Why would you hit him with a chair?" She said, "I can't pick up the couch."
Table's too heavy, yeah.
Old joke everybody knows. Anyhow,
It's the same in my household.
Yeah.
We were so poor we had nothing but hand-me-downs, and to this day I regret having an older sister.
oh, of course, that's a bad one. Now, today we're going to talk about scientific reductionism to begin. What is that?
So, there's kind of a big anti-science movement going right now in America. This is not the first time we've seen this. It's waxed and waned right from the beginning of the country. There was an anti-education movement when Jefferson was still writing the Declaration. We've gone back and forth on this. But we're in a super anti-science period right now. We're literally firing everybody competent. Trump just fired everybody that was directing the National Science Foundation, 22 top scientists in the country, and replaced them with people whose only qualification is signing loyalty oaths to him. Well, maybe you're a maggot. Maybe you think that's great. But here's the problem. America got a lot of its economic ascendancy because we led the world in at least three very important areas: science, technology, and medicine. Oh, education as well. People from all over the world were sending students here to our universities, and that was a significant part of university funding in America. So we had international status, and we called it brain drain. We brain drained other countries and brought their best and brightest here because here's where the opportunities were. If we drive away everybody who's good at science and medicine and technology and education, we're going to be the Beverly Hillbillies of the international scene. And we kind of are right now. I mean, if you're an American who's traveled abroad recently, the most common reaction to Americans is, "What the?" Right? The whole rest of the world is trying to figure out what's wrong with the water here. Maybe it is the fluoride. Maybe I was wrong about that. So one of the things that people resent about science is so-called reductionism. And it is true. One of my early biology teachers says, "What's the first thing you do when you discover a new species? Drop it in a whirring blender." The point being, you study things like enzymes and cells and chemical composition and stuff, and that will never tell you anything about a mouse. Do you want to know about a mouse? You got to watch the way mice live and how they reproduce and how they find food and how they avoid being eaten. But while it is true that what you're calling reductionism is one part of science, we study elements on the way to studying materials, the way that this part of the scientific method works is that first you reduce things down to their basic components. Like you take out a Lego set and you lay all the bricks of each shape in groups, and then you assemble them, and by the time you're done, you've built the Star Wars Death Star. But you started by sorting the bricks. Science works that same way. And the process of breaking things up into bricks and sorting the bricks is analysis. That's the word we would use for what the public calls reductionism. But it is followed by synthesis, where you reassemble those bricks and study the way they interact with each other until you're all the way back up to your Star Wars Death Star, or, in our case, a mouse, or a system of some kind. So it is true that there is an element of reductionism, and many individual scientists, their entire life will be spent studying one particular enzyme or one particular messenger molecule. But all of that gets reassembled later, bit by bit, in the act of synthesis until we understand, for example, how to make mRNA vaccines against COVID. So synthesis is the thing that people think science should be doing, but scientists have to do both. They have to do first analysis and then synthesis, usually. And by the way, different studies will have different structures.
There was a famous quote by a Japanese scientist some 10 years ago that said, Americans are lazy and refuse to learn. And a lot of people were upset by that. They thought it was terribly racist.
I wouldn't bother responding to that.
Well, what I find is that people are comfortable here, and when you threaten their security by telling them something new, they become uncomfortable and they reject it without study. It's very easy to say, well, we've been driving cars for almost 100 years now, a little over 100 years. Nothing bad's happened so far. It's very easy to say, well, this our way of life is the American way of life, and we should embrace it. Every commercial I see now for beer or cars has the American flag in it. We're all star-spangled, starstruck about how great we are. America, in my opinion, has forgotten to be humble.
We have our moments, but Socrates was right, I think, that humility is the first step toward wisdom. Now, one cognitive error, thinking mistake, that we see over and over and talk about here over and over, it permeates everything, and it almost defines ideologues on either side of the aisle, or any side of any aisle, is that we judge an argument by whether we like the conclusion. That is the exact opposite of reasoning. In fact, that's rationalizing. And the better you are at rationalizing, the worse we are at reasoning. We have to follow the evidence. And sometimes the evidence leads us to answers we would rather not have found. Until fairly recently, I thought that American values included things like equality and equal opportunity and justice and even-handed application of the law. The rule of law was something that, until fairly recently, the left and right would have at least said that they agreed on. But if evidence, let's take the book, I'll pick on the left for a minute. Actually, before I even do that, I want to say this. I noticed we haven't had an erratum episode yet. We need to do an episode where we correct errors. But either Pete and I are perfect, which it would be both of our opinion,
one of us,
or you guys aren't holding our feet to the fire enough. So what we get wrong, errors of fact or errors of reasoning, please call our attention to them. We actually want to do an episode of corrections, but we haven't yet gotten comments that would fill up an episode like that. So feel free to gig us on that. For example, somebody got mad at me for not sounding religious. I can't do anything with that, but if he had said, you should believe what I believe, and here's why, we could have had a discussion about that. So, anyway.
Well, let me interject real quickly. I'm not anti-religion. I certainly don't want to impugn anybody's religion, but I don't want anybody's religion being forced on me. But if you're Muslim, if you're Catholic, whatever your religion might be, that's all right. If that helps you deal with daily life, I see nothing wrong with that.
I do, actually. When religion is used as a weapon, for example, the Hobby Lobby court case that led to them being allowed to withhold birth control from their employees' health plans. We had laws explicitly in place saying that a business larger than a certain size has an accountability to public ethics and so forth. And Hobby Lobby lobbied for the religious freedom to oppress people who didn't agree with them. In America, usually, when we have a religious freedom case, it's about who will I be allowed to oppress, okay? I don't want to have to bake a cake for gay people, right? So, and now we have a strong vein of people who, in the name of religion, are aching for an apocalypse. Ooh, we could fulfill God's plan. We could have a big apocalypse. And you can believe that. You can believe the end of the world is coming and that you'll be special and you'll rise up and stuff and get to watch everybody else suffer when the end of the world comes. But that is a horrible basis for government. The role of government is not to end the world, but to preserve stability and justice. And so, yeah, if God wants to end the world, no government is going to get in his way. We don't need to vote for an apocalyptic government, and that's what we have done fairly recently. Where I wanted to go, though, was when we judge an argument by its conclusion, I was going to pick on the left, not the right, actually, was where I intended to go.
Well, go ahead.
A book came out a while ago called The Bell Curve. This was back in the 70s. And the Bell Curve made a case, based on statistics and stuff, that there were racial differences in aptitude and IQ. And there was this huge backlash. You can't be talking that way. And so people said, we hate the answer so much that we hate the guy who wrote the Bell Curve. His name was Bell, so there was kind of a pun in the name. But actually, when some rational thinkers sat down and went over the book, it was just a scientifically terrible book. If the book had been attacked because it was bad science, they could have refuted this guy. But instead they started with, we hate that answer, and therefore we hate your book. You can't do that. You can't react to an argument by going, I don't want to see the data. Instead, look at the data, and if you're right, the data will be wrong. And if the data is right, you might need to change your mind. In the case of the bell curve, all we had to do was analyze it scientifically, and it was clearly horseshit. We didn't have to hate the answer. We could just hate the science.
Well, I would say to people, I would hope that people, and right now we're living in an era where people are ruled by emotion rather than analytics. I would say to people, I know you're emotional about certain subjects, but try and draw it back and study the subject itself. And then if you want to get emotional, do it. Because it might change your mind about the whole thing. You never know, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I get surprised all the time. And sometimes I have to recalibrate my thinking in a way that's unpleasant to me. The other thing is, I've noticed this a lot. Everybody, if Mike Tyson walked into a room and said, anybody up for a fist fight, all the guys would leave instantly. And all the women would go, ooh, right? And if Albert Einstein walks into a room and says, anybody up for a math contest, everybody, you know. Mm-hmm. But everybody thinks they're the smartest guy in every room. We know we're not the strongest. We know we're not the tallest. We know we're not the best basketball player. But smart, we all think we have some special claim on. You're not. In most rooms, you're not the smartest guy in every room. But the odds are 90% that you are not in the top 10%.
But isn't that a common defense mechanism? To think, look at these guys. Who do they think they are?
You know what's an even better defense mechanism? Reality. Mm-hmm. Understand the real world so you can make decisions appropriate to the actual facts of the world, and you make better decisions. So, yeah, a defense mechanism can protect our ego and our emotions, but the cost is that we make too many mistakes in the world.
Switching subjects, I knew people that were in cults, and they left the cults when, for instance, I'll give you an example here. The cult leader was telling them that he was the ultimate, almost like a god. And when he died, there was a fight between two other people who claimed they were both God.
Like the Sunni and Shia Islam.
So they cut out. And there's a big movement that says you can deprogram people from cults. I don't know if there's any one way to do that. I think people have to have self-realization.
When we try to suppress the other guy's voice, no matter who the other guy is, we're basically acknowledging that we couldn't win a debate with them. That in the free market of ideas, we're afraid they would prevail. If we don't like an idea, we need to show why that is not the best idea, rather than just hate the person who's speaking it. Sometimes they're mistaken. They're just mistaken. There are a lot of people raised in this country, told from early childhood, while the brain is still forming, that race or gender predicts things like intelligence and competence. The evidence against that is utterly overwhelming. I mean, it's absolutely, we know the answer to this one. It's clear as can be that that's not true. But if you were raised with that from early childhood, you don't look at evidence. You just assume that whoever disagrees with that must be wrong, because your brain literally formed around these harmful ideas. So I tend to think of racists as victims as much as problems.
Well, I think it's not that a lot of people are told that racism is right. I think a lot of people don't know anybody of a different race growing up, so they secretly fear them, and they don't like what they fear.
And that's another prominent cognitive pattern. When we see two things that are striking to us at the same time, we link them together. They must be associated. So this guy on the front page of the paper is a murderer, and he's not the same color as me. So that color must be the color of murderers. It is true that essentially all of the Mexican cartel people in the U.S. are Mexicans. But it is not true that most Mexicans are cartel members. It doesn't work the other way around. But our brain jumps to that. We're just built that way. And by the way, a great book I recommend to everybody is Thinking Fast and Slow by a guy named Daniel Kahneman. He and his partner, Daniel Tversky, got Nobel Prizes. Well, he got the Nobel Prize because you have to be alive to receive it, but he verbally shared it with Daniel Tversky. Where I'm going with this is that this is where a lot of these cognitive biases and errors are first made explicit, and it's a very readable book. And you'll understand so much more about the people around you if you read this book, Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman.
Now I want to segue this into a subject we've never approached before. LGBTQ conversion, which in the past has proven to cause great self-harm to people, isn't being the majority of being gay. Some people choose that lifestyle, but isn't the vast majority because of chromosomes? They're just their body is just different, or do we not have stats on that?
What science there is tends to suggest that this is inherent in people, that we're born straight or gay or fluid or and there's a widely held belief in science. I'm going to backtrack a little bit in a second. A widely held belief in science that we're all somewhere on a spectrum between straight and gay. So, for example, there's a ton of straight people who have experimented with same-gender intimacy. And there are some people who only ever would be with one gender or the other. The problem is this is an area of science where almost everybody who studies it knows what they want to find.
Yeah.
So there are certain areas of, as you can tell, I'm a big fan of science and the scientific method, but there are some broad swaths of science that are deeply contaminated by the fact that everybody goes in with an agenda. So the people who say, no, this is definitely learned behavior, and the people who say, no, this is definitely genetic, they tend to be people who found whatever it was they were looking for in the first place. So I'm not going to say that I think I fully understand the science. On the other hand, I also don't really care about other people's sex lives.
Well, no, I don't want to be bedroom police. I don't get it why some people do. The idea of LGBTQ conversion is they're trying to deprogram gay people.
Right, and we know that a lot of pretty terrible harm has been done from that. People driven to suicide because they learn to hate what they can't escape feeling that they are. As far as I can tell, conversion has a pretty low success rate. But weirdly enough, one of the things that the people who favor conversion camps are big on is they think that non-binary gender people, way beyond just homosexual, but non-binary gender people, people who are non-traditional, I'll say, that they're grooming the next generation to be their prey, I guess. In fact, the place where we've seen the most explicit cases of this has been the conversion camps. And if you think about it, if you're somebody who's looking for young people of your own gender to seduce, wow, it's like a farm. They just bring them in and hand them to you. And then they go away and say, hey, chain them up, lock them in a room, and do whatever you want with them, and let us know how it all turns out.
Wow. Yeah, quite often on the subject of science finding, not science, but individuals finding what they want to find. Do you know the story behind the Unabomber?
I know who Ted Kaczynski is.
After the Korean War, 500 Korean War veterans, they left the country and went to North Korea. And they took pictures of themselves saying, I'd rather do this than go back home. That worried the American government. They worried the military. And they said, why would these guys do this? So they took a whole group of college students and question them about their loyalty, about where they would want to move, where they would live if they could. And one person in particular, now they had a husband and wife team, psychologists, that were doing this. And they would normally take people for 3 hours in a room and just hammer them on, are you loyal? Are you an American? What is your faith? What is your loyalty? What is your basics for everything? And the military said, be careful of this Kaczynski guy. He's very frail. He's very intelligent, but very frail. Don't push him too hard. We don't want to harm him. Well, it turns out the husband and wife were sadists. They kept him in a room for 3 days. When he came out, he was so disgusted in our country that they had created their own monster. That's what so-called conversion therapy can do to people. They don't talk about that much, but it's a matter of public record. I find this, number one, I'm not gay. Okay, if I'm on an island with nothing but the New York Ranger hockey team for 40 years, after 4 decades of not getting any action, I'm sure I'd start eyeing up the goalie. He'd have to wear the mask, of course, but still. Normally, I find sex with a man abhorrent. But if you're born with the wrong chromosomes, as we call them wrong chromosomes, why should I hate you for that? There's very little you can do about that, and why should I care one or the other? To have the government getting in, becoming bedroom police, very dangerous.
I haven't ever really understood why this is such a touch point for the right, but maybe one of you can write in and tell us. I know there's something about grooming, but so far as I can tell, there is no data that gay men are more likely to be interested in children than straight men are. In fact, at least numerically, there's a hell of a lot more kids abused by straight males than by gay ones. So if it's the grooming thing, I have looked at that. I have tried to find evidence for that, and I can't find it. If you think you have some, let us know. Tell us where to look.
Now, changing subjects again, but once again, today I think we're doing a lot of things on sociology. Social Darwinism. Now, we broke away from royalty, from the kings of England, because they said, God told us we're better than you. We are royalty. We're royal. His Highness, His Excellency. We broke away from them because the Church of England told us now we're getting back to that kind of thing. Recently, an American leader was, I don't know how you could say, deified by the evangelicals by building a golden statue of him, much like the golden calf.
The golden calf is exactly what I was thinking about, yeah.
And they plan to build more of them. Okay, why can't people see themselves in doing this?
You mean, why would people who are religious fundamentalists endorse somebody who left his first wife for his mistress, then married her, then left her for his next mistress, while she was working here illegally before starting a pogrom against people working here illegally, and who is a business genius who has bankrupted most of the people who've ever worked with him with 34 felonies against him, and also has lost a sexual harassment suit, and has been actually on TV going into the dressing room of the Junior Miss pageant. Why would they think it was okay to build golden statues of him? Well, he was chosen by Jesus. I've seen pictures online of Jesus giving him a back rub.
Okay, but social Darwinism, isn't that again, explain it to us, isn't that again a form of one class is better than another?
Social Darwinism is the idea that our worth is determined by our survival in the social environment. Almost without exception, the people who endorse social Darwinism, and Darwinism is actually not a scientific word, reject the idea of evolution by selection. I'm trying to remember that. Anyway, competitive evolution.
Mm-hmm.
They reject it as a biological term, but adopt it as a social term. Darwin himself was quite explicit that he would not apply these biological principles as sociological principles. In fact, Darwin was one of the anti-racists of his day, yet he gets cited all the time by racists now, which gives you an idea of how carefully they're doing their homework.
Isn't so? I'm under this impression. Social Darwinism is we're rich, so we're rich
We
because
must be the best.
so we're smarter than everybody. You should let us take care of you.
Well, we're also rich because we stumbled on the last unlooted continent on the planet and then killed everybody that was here and took their stuff. So that gave us a good running start. I'm not anti-American. I actually love the best things about this country. But I'm anti-blindness. We have to look at ourselves critically and do the maintenance it takes to continue to be a great country. Right now, we're actually unwinding everything that has made us great. I just talked about that, the science, technology, education, medicine. We're rolling all that back, and we're rolling back the leadership we had in the world. We've pissed off every ally we've ever had. And weirdly enough, you talked about Ted Kaczynski's deprogramming from North Korea. We are essentially now voting to be more like North Korea.
Yeah. And that's scary. It very much is. I want to talk about social media control and homelessness. We don't have enough time this episode, but we'll get to that in the future. Now, once again, if you have complaints, that's one thing. But if you have suggestions, please let us know. We'll respond to those. They're great. I love to hear from people. So that kills our time for today. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the program. I'm Pete Christensen.
I'm Coffee Brown.
And remember, don't die dumb.